The day before the wedding, my mom said, "You always make it about you." My cousin mocked, "Watch her cry for attention." My sister said, "Just stay home if you're gonna ruin it again." I packed my bags. But on the wedding day, they all apologized on their knees. I'm Nadine, 33, born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina, though it never really felt like home. Not because the town isn't beautiful, it is. It's nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, full of nature trails, art galleries, music festivals. It's a dream place to grow up. But for me, that dream was always just out of reach. I was the emotional one. The difficult one. The one who always overreacted. My mom, Lorraine, is what you'd call a classic Southern woman. Everything looks fine on the outside: well-decorated living room, picture-perfect family photos, polite church smiles. But inside, there's a pressure cooker, and most of the time, it was aimed at me. My dad left when I was 11. No warning. Just didn't come home one day. There were whispers about a woman in Georgia. I asked once. I got slapped. After that, I didn't ask again. Mom barely acknowledged he existed after he left. His name became this ghostly presence in the house, like if you even mentioned him, you'd release something dark and uncontrollable. I grew up walking on eggshells. I learned to stay quiet, disappear into books, and cry only when no one was around to accuse me of doing it for attention. Camille, my younger sister by 3 years, was born for the spotlight. She was beautiful, composed, always said the right thing. The world loved her, and our mom worshipped her. If I was the shadow in the room, Camille was the sunlight. No matter how hard I tried to be included, I was always a little too much, a little too awkward, a little too off. Then there was Sierra, my cousin. Her mom's younger sister, struggled with drug addiction for most of Sierra's childhood. So Sierra was often dropped at our place for weeks, sometimes months. The thing is, instead of growing closer because of our shared circumstances, she learned early how to mirror mom's judgment. Sierra figured out that siding with Camille and mom meant approval, safety, affection. And I was easy to scapegoat. I moved out the minute I could afford a shared apartment with a friend in West Asheville. I tried to build a life for myself, studied art history, worked at a bookstore downtown, dated carefully and mostly unsuccessfully. I stayed away from family gatherings for years, except for birthdays and funerals. Every time I showed up, I regretted it. But every time I stayed away, I felt guilty. Then Camille got engaged to a guy named Joel. I met him once before they got serious, smart, kind, soft-spoken. The kind of guy who, honestly, seemed too good for the chaos he was walking into. When I got the wedding invitation, I wasn't surprised that I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. I wasn't even asked to help plan. It was a formality. A line in a checklist. I RSVP'd anyway. The week of the wedding, the whole family rented this big Airbnb near the vineyard where the ceremony was happening. Rustic farmhouse, all white and wood and overpriced. I took time off work. Bought a new dress. Tried to psych myself up. I told myself, it's not about you. Just go. Smile. Support your sister. Leave quietly if it gets too much. I arrived 2 days before the wedding. I was immediately reminded that my existence was a disruption. The moment I walked into the house, Sierra gave me this once-over glance, like she was mentally scoring my outfit. Camille offered a hug but kept her arms stiff. My mom nodded at me and turned back to a conversation about floral arrangements. Fine. Whatever. I kept my head down, offered to help wherever I could, and mostly stayed out of the way. The rehearsal dinner was where things started to unravel. I wore a navy wrap dress and flats. Simple, clean, appropriate. Everyone else looked like they were headed to the Emmys. Sierra said loudly to someone, "At least try to look like you belong." I pretended I didn't hear it. My mom asked if I wanted water with my meal, then cut me off mid-sentence to compliment Camille's earrings. After dinner, while people lingered over dessert, I offered to help clean up. That's when Mom cornered me by the sink. "You always make it about you," she said, not even angry, just exhausted, like I was a chore. I blinked at her. "I haven't said a word all night." "Exactly," she said, lips tight. "That's your move. Sulk quietly until someone asks what's wrong." I stood there, dish towel in hand, stunned. Sierra walked past me and whispered, "Watch her cry for attention." "And Camille?" She didn't defend me. She just said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Just stay home if you're gonna ruin it again." It felt like I was 11 again. Standing in a room full of people who were supposed to love me, yet somehow made me feel like a burden just for existing. I walked upstairs, packed my small suitcase, called a cab back to my apartment in Asheville. I left without saying goodbye. Not because I was being dramatic, but because I knew, if I stayed, I'd fall apart in front of everyone. And they would call it a scene. That night, I laid in my small apartment, listening to nothing but the buzz of the city. I cried. Not loud sobs. Just quiet tears that slid down my face like they'd been waiting all week. I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see any pictures. I didn't want to know how much they didn't notice I was gone. But they did. And what happened next, well, it shook everything I thought I knew about them. I turned off my phone that night, tossed it on the floor next to my bed, and stared at the ceiling. My apartment wasn't much, just a studio with creaky floors and a second-hand couch I used more than my bed, but it was mine. For a few hours, I was alone with my thoughts, which wasn't always a good thing. Every word they'd said replayed in my head on a loop. My mother's voice, sharp and tired, "You always make it about you." Camille's passive-aggressive sigh, "Just stay home if you're gonna ruin it again." I didn't think they'd even notice I was gone. And if they did, I figured they'd chalk it up to me being emotional and dramatic like they always did. They probably made jokes about it, maybe told Joel that I had a history of disappearing or throwing fits. It didn't matter anymore. I didn't want to be the punching bag in their highlight reel of a wedding. I slept late the next morning, not out of rest but because I couldn't face the day. I knew the ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. I imagined the white chairs lined up in the vineyard, the rose petals, the polite clapping. I imagined Camille glowing in her lace dress and Joel smiling beside her. I pictured Mom beaming with pride, Sierra snapping selfies with the bridal party, and me nowhere in sight. Around noon, I finally turned my phone back on. No missed calls. No texts. I got up, made coffee, stood barefoot on the tile floor in my little kitchenette, and tried not to feel bitter. Tried not to cry again. Let them have their day, I told myself. Let them have their picture-perfect wedding without me ruining the frame. I hadn't even poured my second cup of coffee when my phone rang. Joel. I stared at the screen, confused. My stomach twisted. "Hey, Joel?" I answered, cautious. There was a long pause on the other end. "Hey, Nadine," he finally said. His voice was quiet. "Can you talk?" Yeah?" I leaned against the counter. "Is everything okay?" He sighed. "I don't know. I mean, not really." I waited. "I need to apologize," he said. "And I think Camille does too. Actually, a lot of people do." I blinked. "What happened?" I think you should come here." "To the wedding?" "No. It's over. I mean, the ceremony happened. The guests are gone. But, something changed. Just, please. Will you come?" I didn't answer right away. I wasn't even dressed. I had no makeup on. My hair was a mess. But something in his voice didn't sound rehearsed. It didn't sound like a guilt trip. It sounded honest. So I told him I'd come. I wasn't sure why, even as I threw on jeans and a sweater and pulled my hair into a bun. I just knew I had to see for myself whatever this was. Not for closure, not even for revenge. I just needed to know the truth. The vineyard was 45 minutes away. I drove the back roads with the windows down, the mountain air cool and quiet. I passed fields of tall grass, old barns, sleepy towns with gas stations and diners. It felt like I was driving through the past, like every mile was taking me back to something I never got to heal. When I pulled into the gravel lot by the barn, the place was almost empty. A few staff members were packing up chairs. The fairy lights still twinkled between the trees, but the magic was gone. The music had stopped. The laughter had faded. Joel was waiting for me outside the barn, hands in his pockets, suit jacket off, tie loosened. He looked tired. But when he saw me, he smiled, softly, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed. "She's inside," he said. "Camille?" He nodded. "And your mom?" "And Sierra." My stomach dropped. "All of them?" He nodded again. "They wanted to talk to you." I'm sorry, Nadine. I didn't realize how bad it was. Not until today. I followed him in. The barn was dim now, the floral centerpieces half wilted, tables half cleared. In the corner near the fireplace, I saw them, Camille, sitting on a wooden bench with her dress slightly stained, mascara smudged around her eyes. Sierra beside her, unusually quiet. And my mother, standing behind them, arms crossed but her face unusually unreadable. Camille stood when she saw me. "Nadine," she said. Her voice cracked. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," I said honestly. She stepped forward, then hesitated. "I'm sorry," she said. "God, I am so sorry." I didn't move. "I've been awful to you," she continued. "Not just this week. 4 years. I let Mom's way of handling things convince me it was normal. I let Sierra talk crap about you and I never stopped her. I thought you'd be fine. That you were strong enough to take it. But I didn't see what it did to you." I could feel my throat tighten, but I stayed silent. Sierra looked up. Her eyes were red too. "Me too," she said. I thought I was just joking. But I know now I wasn't. I was cruel. I was just trying to fit in." I turned to my mom. "And you?" She didn't look away. "I failed you," she said quietly. "I thought being hard on you would make you stronger. But I didn't protect you. I didn't listen to you. I saw your emotions as weakness because I couldn't face my own." It was surreal. 3 people who had spent years tearing me down were now unraveling. And not with pride or defiance, but with guilt. With grief. My mother took a deep breath, then did something I never thought I'd see. She knelt. Right there, on the barn floor. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." Then Camille knelt too. And Sierra followed. 3 women, on the floor of a barn, on what should have been a perfect wedding day, begging for forgiveness. I didn't know what to say. So I just stood there. Letting it all sink in. Letting myself, for the first time, feel seen. I didn't speak for a long moment. I just stood there, blinking, arms folded tightly across my chest, unsure what to do with the avalanche of words they'd dropped at my feet. The old me, the version they'd known and pushed around, might have broken down, forgiven quickly just to keep the peace. But that version of me had packed a suitcase 2 nights ago, sat alone in a quiet apartment, and decided she was done shrinking to fit their narrative. Still, watching my mother, on her knees? It did something to me. The woman who had always acted like emotions were private, like vulnerability was a sin, was now looking up at me with eyes full of regret. That stubborn pride she wore like armor was cracking right in front of me. Camille's veil was off, her hair pinned sloppily behind her ears. The soft, manicured image she'd crafted for this day had unraveled. Her wedding dress had dirt on the hem. Her foundation was streaked. She looked less like a bride and more like a woman who had come face to face with truth, and lost the fight. Sierra didn't speak again. She just kept her head down, her hands clasped like she was praying. Maybe she was. I sat down on a bench nearby. My legs felt shaky, like if I stood any longer I might collapse under the weight of what was happening. Why now? I finally asked. No one answered right away. Joel stepped forward, cleared his throat. It started when people asked where you were, he said. Guests, friends, even the photographer. Camille had made you part of the seating plan. When you weren't there, people asked questions. At first, she brushed it off, said you couldn't make it. But I think the guilt started crawling in. Camille nodded, looking over at me. I told myself I didn't care. But then, I was walking down the aisle, and I caught a glimpse of the empty seat. Your seat. She swallowed hard. And I knew why it was empty. My mother stayed quiet. Joel continued, after the ceremony, Camille disappeared into the back room. She was crying. I went to find her, and Sierra and your mom were there. I didn't know what had happened the night before, but they filled me in. My mom looked down at her hands. We started talking, Camille said softly. About the way we treat you. About the way we always have. And it just unraveled. Every memory. Every moment we shut you out, mocked you, blamed you for things that weren't yours to carry. Sierra finally spoke. I remembered once, when we were kids, she said. You were crying in the hallway after Mom's overdose. I asked if you were okay and then laughed. Laughed. I was so mean. And you just looked at me like you expected it. The barn was quiet except for the faint hum of the evening crickets outside. The air smelled like dying roses and leftover champagne. I looked at them, these three women who had haunted my memories for so long, and saw them differently. Not as villains. Not as monsters. Just broken people, trying to rewrite the story too late. I don't know what to say, I admitted. I'm still angry. I've spent years feeling invisible. Like nothing I ever did was good enough. Like just existing was inconvenient. My mom nodded slowly, still kneeling. I know. I don't expect forgiveness today. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. Any of you. I understand, Camille said. But we're going to show you we mean it. Not just say it. I believed her. Or at least, I wanted to. Because despite everything, despite all the bitterness and the years of neglect and the guilt I'd carried for simply feeling things too deeply, they were here now. Not polished. Not graceful. Not with perfect words or hollow hugs. Just here. It didn't erase what had been said. It didn't change what had been done. But for the first time, it felt like the weight wasn't mine alone to carry. Joel offered to drive me home. Camille asked if I'd be willing to stay for a little while longer, maybe have a drink with them, just to talk. Not about the wedding, not about fixing things, but just to sit. I hesitated. Then I said, okay. Not because I was ready. But because I deserved to be the one who decided when it was over. I stayed. Not because I had forgiven them, but because I realized something powerful, I finally had control. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one chasing apologies, begging to be seen, or shrinking into a quiet apology of a daughter or sister. They had knelt before me. And while part of me wanted to scream or walk out again just to prove a point, another part wanted something deeper, something that lasted longer than their tears. I sat with them at one of the long wooden tables, mostly in silence, while Camille poured us all a glass of leftover champagne. The glasses clinked softly, but we didn't toast. We weren't there to celebrate. Not yet. Maybe never. That night, I went home to my apartment in Asheville. Joel offered to drive me, but I declined. I needed the time alone. The road back felt different. Less like an escape, more like a return to something I had built with my own hands, untouched by their judgment. The next few weeks were quiet. I expected texts or calls, maybe awkward follow-ups or hollow check-ins. But what I got instead was surprising. Camille sent me a card. Handwritten. I've started therapy. I'm not doing it to prove anything to you, I'm doing it because I finally saw what I became. I'm so sorry. If you never forgive me, I'll still keep working on myself. Then Sierra reached out. She asked if we could talk, no pressure. I told her I needed time, but I appreciated the ask. And my mother? She didn't say much at first. But she showed up one Sunday morning at the bookstore where I worked. I nearly dropped the mug I was holding when I saw her standing there, holding a paperback copy of The Art of Letting Go. Good book, I muttered, blinking. I heard, she said. I'm starting with that. It wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic. But it was something. And here's where the revenge part comes in, not cruel, not violent. But clean. Honest. Satisfying. I started living for me. Every day, every choice, I stopped asking what they'd think, how they'd judge, how they'd twist it. I took a second job teaching art workshops to kids on Saturdays. I moved to a slightly bigger apartment with more light. I adopted a rescue cat and named her Freckles. I started saying no. No to family dinners that drained me. No to holiday gatherings where I was expected to play nice and quiet while everyone else reaped the praise. But the real revenge? Camille and I eventually did talk. Really talk. And she told me how strange it felt, how hard it was, to go through milestones without me. I keep wanting to call you, she said one day on the phone, months later. But then I stopped myself, because I'm scared I haven't earned that yet. You haven't, I told her gently. But you're trying. And that's worth something. She cried. I didn't. That was new for us. Mom had started going to group counseling at the church. Sierra moved out of state, took a job that had nothing to do with the family circle, and sent me a message on my birthday, I see you now. I'm sorry it took this long. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. I wasn't craving their validation the way I once had. My life wasn't built around trying to fit in with people who built walls around their hearts and called it love. The final piece? Camille sent me a photo one afternoon. It was from her wedding, one I hadn't seen before. I was missing from the photo, obviously. But someone, Joel, I think, had left an empty chair in the front row, with a single flower on it. On the back, Camille had written, "This seat was yours. I'll never forgive myself for making you walk away from it. But thank you, for walking away anyway." It woke us all up. That was the moment I realized, I had spent so many years begging to be in their story. And in the end, they had written mine into theirs with ink made from guilt and memory. My revenge wasn't slamming doors or screaming in their faces. It was thriving without them. It was healing without their permission. It was being so deeply, powerfully myself that they had no choice but to either step up or stay behind. And for the first time in my life, that choice was mine. Not theirs.